it used to be like, I want FU money. And now it's like, I want my great grandchildren to have FU money.
I would prefer my great grandchildren didn't use the phrase F you to anybody.
Yes, exactly.
Why would I want great grandchildren running around saying F you to anybody? Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I'm your host, Shawn David Nelson, that love sack guy, in case I'm not that memorable any other way. Listen, thanks for making this podcast awesome. It's your listenership, it's your likes and shares on social media that have propelled it forward and continue to allow me to bring to you the most successful people on the planet and their wisdom, speaking directly to you and to me. I love it selfishly. So please share this with a friend, give it a star rating in the app. It really makes a difference in our existence. I think our platform advertises, but I take no advertising money at all. I'm just trying to get these conversations out there for my benefit, for your benefit, for our benefit. Today, we explore a Shawnism. This is one that it just weighs on me every day of my life, because I'll tell you a funny story. My team, we Love Sex always had a sense of humor, and it's always, by the way, had great design talent. And my design team, who was always like under my thumb, because like every logo, every slogan, every poster, every product had to pass through my, critique in the earliest days. And being who I am naturally, my natural disposition for energy and assertiveness, they made me this t-shirt one time that said spontaneously combustible. And it was the logo from you'd see on it's like the diamond shaped logo you'd see on the side of a propane tank, and it has like flames, but it was my hair, because I had spiky hair back then, and it was like my silhouette. And I actually took it kind of like a compliment, yeah, I'm like this like energetic CEO, but they were making fun of me, is what it really was. They were making fun of me because I was such a hothead. I was so I could be so cutting. I could be so critical. I could be so angry. I could get really pissed off when, it's like, come on, we talked about this 6 times. I'd have to get it my way. And it would take most of my adult experience to finally get to the place where I could stay cool and be kind in almost any situation. I still am not perfect. And in fact, I have those desires at moments to, lash out, to say the critical thing in the moment, to be a little bit terse, whether it's with my own kids, whether it's with my team, out in the world, when I'm in a bad mood and the rain then dumps and I'm in a hurry and someone's not cooperating. And I'll tell you, the ability to develop the capacity to stay cool, be kind, stay calm, get calm, be calm in those moments, as well as on a daily basis. In this episode, we'll go deep with one of the world's most trusted and capable advisors. This is a person who advises some of those wealthiest people on the planet about their wealth, how to invest, how to raise their kids, how to make life decisions. Some of his advice on how we can remain calm in the moment, but also get calm in those early morning hours, through our morning routine, through our routines in general, through the things we read. We talk about how consciousness relates to calmness, right? Our consciousness. And this is something that must be developed, right? Consciousness can be an outcome. If calmness can be an outcome, if we're working on our consciousness. Don't tie yourself to financial wealth. Of course, it's everything so many people think they want to achieve, and we should chase it, I think. But wealth can mean many things, and as almost anyone with any of it will tell you, the other realms of wealth matter far more than the financial ones. In fact, I couldn't believe it. This financial advisor admits that financial wealth actually makes it harder, can make it harder for us to achieve the realms where true wealth, meaningful, lasting wealth comes from. Invest in your capabilities and control those capabilities, even as we control our appetites and we control the things we can't control. Finally, don't rob anyone of uncertainty, especially not your own children. We love to shelter them from the uncertainty that life will bring, but that's what shapes us, is this life's uncertainty. Growth often happens through uncertainty. We will unpack this all today with one of the foremost financial advisors in the world, Brandon Hatton. Today's guest is someone who knows about the real meaning of wealth. And spoiler alert, it's not just about money. He's an investment manager, speaker, and author of Conscious Wealth, where he challenges us to rethink success and discover what enough really means. This man truly believes in our Shawnism today. Calm is power. Because in a world that's loud, reactive, and constantly pulling us off balance, it is important to recognize that staying calm is a true superpower. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Brandon Hatton.
Thank you, Shawn. Great to have you. And I love how you talked about all the noise out there today. I'm just going to jump right in it. I went to the gym today and I ran, and I have my little headphones on, so I'm just in my own space. And then I went down to this Pilates class thinking, well, this will be peaceful. And it's not. It's not. Like, this thing that is supposed to be this exercise where you're focusing on your breathing and this and that. And the music was blaring, and it was really challenging. And this music is everywhere. The sound is everywhere, and it's constantly taking us out of our bodies. I shouldn't say us. I don't know about other people. For me, it's pulling me out of my body. Yeah. So I love how you said that.
Look, it's calm is power. We're going to get into it. You know, it's a superpower to be able to find even a moment of calmness amidst a world that is increasingly volatile, unpredictable, right? And chaotic. And so, look, without thinking too hard, when you heard today's topic, calm is power, you know, even after your Pilates experience, what's the first experience that comes to mind for you?
I think of it in terms of, I see a lot within the framework of the Ayurvedic framework and how we live in such a Vata world where everything is so airy, it's so on the go, it's so movement. I went to a Panchakarma clinic in Nepal. A client works and has built up this quote unquote orphanage out there. And I went out there and I went hiking with him and his kids, and it was amazing, and learned all about the culture. And then I spent 17 days doing this detox treatment, and I was for sure thinking like, I have too much fire in me. If you know this, the pitta.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you have too much wind. You have enough fire, but the wind is just pushing it and constantly creating this agitation. And as a CEO or somebody who's, you know, I don't normally call myself that, but that is what I do. It's almost, it's a trait that gets pulled into that position, this energy, this movement, and to be able to be grounded and to adjust to that is really what I think about with calm, is being grounded. And that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Why don't you give us a 2-minute lesson on your spiritual experience in Nepal and the wind, fire, water, all the, you know, break that down for us.
Sure. What I like about Ayurvedic medicine, and I'm not an expert, but I do understand that the earth is made of elements and our body is made of elements. And the earth elements are usually almost in balance. And if not, they have a really easy way of getting adjusted because they don't get their brain in the way. But our bodies are not always in balance. We have brains, we have desires, we try to operate in a world. and they can become imbalanced. So I was there for 17 days for like, and I was getting like sometimes 6 hours of treatment a day, whether it was massage, or steam or herbs or pouring oil over my forehead, which was by far my favorite. But it
Mm,
was all of these things that was all of these activities that were bringing up the excess in your body and then expulsing them, whether it was through some unpleasant things to talk about, or even just sweating and getting it out of your body, purging
mm.
it from your body to bring your levels back. It was 17 days. This was very intense. But afterwards, I was like floating, but floating in a good way. I was still grounded. I was still calm. It was the calmest I think I've been since then.
Hmm. That's cool. What an experience.
It's amazing.
How many people get 17 days of wellness ever in their entire mortal existence?
Yeah, right.
I'm
Yeah,
serious. That's amazing.
it was amazing. It's such a gift.
Wow. Well, look, I'm a spiritual person. I'm religious. I'm Christian. Uh, I'm a big believer in things both physical and spiritual, and mental, and how it's all connected. I really am, and I think that um, practices like these that you're describing are not remotely irrelevant or specious. I think all of these things are connected, and I think that um, somewhere at the root of all those realms, the physical, the spiritual, the mental, is this calmness, uh, in the sense that every one of those realms can be plagued by the opposite of calm. And every one of those realms that we all exist in benefits from a foundation of calmness, And I think it's embodied in our need as human beings for sleep. Like I heard it said well recently in some other podcast, probably. If we had to explain, if an alien force came down and let's pretend they were nothing like us, and they showed up on planet Earth and they were peaceful and just wanted to know, and they were learning about us, and we had to explain sleep. Like we had to, okay, so like every time the sun goes, every time the sun goes down, we do this thing where we go get horizontal for like 8 hours and we close our eyes. And that, like, how would you even explain what sleep is? But is there anything more representative of, calmness than sleep, especially when it works, when we achieve a deep sleep? And it's hardwired into our existence on Earth. It rises and sets like the sun. I mean, it's like you could set your clock by it. And yet we can't even explain it. We can't even explain consciousness. To this day, we can build rocket ships. We can explore, the depths of the human psyche, but we don't understand consciousness, which you and I are existing in at this moment. And so is everyone listening to this. And it
Mhm.
cannot be explained what consciousness is, or how to manipulate it. How weird is that?
Well, so I always have a copy not too far away from me is the Tao Te Ching. And so Lao Tzu says in that, and other people I'm sure have said it, those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. And so consciousness isn't something we can solve with our brains. It's something that we can feel and sense, but maybe it's not meant to be known. And in fact, maybe it's our brains that obstruct consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And right, because the irony is, like I would imagine, my definition of consciousness is most animals in the animal kingdom are conscious. Like they just
Mm-hmm.
have full living, and why? Because they don't have like the type of critical thinking that we have, or the brains or the ego that get in the way.
Mm.
Um, so those are just some thoughts I have, and not necessarily answers to what you're saying. Just
No, I love it. I mean, you've named your organization.
yes, yes, yeah, it's something we're really proud of.
And look, specifically the piece of consciousness, I guess, that I'm referring to is very specific, in the sense that I had this professor at Parsons. I got to chase a master's degree at Parsons School of Design, and this guy taught at the University of Chicago and was doing deep research. He was one of the foremost researchers on consciousness in its literal sense, meaning they can observe the brain waves at the moment we awake, and they can out of sleep, for instance, or out of a coma, which is really a deep sleep, and they can see it happen and they can know that it happens, but they cannot reproduce it or induce it. Like they can put a coma patient, for instance, at the right temperature with the right heart rate, who knows what, to hopefully see that person awake, but they cannot wake someone from a coma. It cannot be induced. So the literal consciousness, like I am awake, I am perceiving, I am experiencing, and then you take it to, a higher level, let's call it, of consciousness, as I presume you sort of mean it with the name of your organization. I'm involved with conscious capitalism. So it's a word that gets, which I know you've spoken at. And in general, this idea of consciousness, it's one of our table stakes values at Lovesac, consciousness. So this is a big topic, but to pull it back, to this idea of calm, any other, you've quoted Lao Tzu already, who I love. I got to study Lao Tzu in Chinese as part of my
that's amazing.
original degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, any other thoughts on consciousness before we pull it back to calm is power?
So my meditation practice is tantric, so it comes from the Indian tradition. And again, not an expert on this. I'm the type of person that just learns enough that I can like sink my teeth into it, and it makes sense for me. And I don't need to go into details, but I do know that Shiva is pure. Like this god Shiva is the representation of pure consciousness. And Shiva, if you ever seen the statue, he is standing on the demon of forgetfulness, and so therefore, we can also define consciousness just as remembering that our life is finite, remembering that like there's a sky, right? And that remembering that all of this, whether it's business or me going to the gym, is all just a way of passing time and deepening and strengthening our relationship with ourselves and others. And that's to me, consciousness is remembering the stakes at hand.
I love that. And I love the idea of remembering. Remember is one of the most utilized words in all of Scripture. I'm a Christian, so from the Bible, and in my case, even the Book of Mormon, one of the most trafficked words of all words in Scripture is remember.
I had no idea. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, look, truth is truth, and that's what I love about what you're poking at. These principles are true principles, and I love that you're highlighting the practice of meditation. It's something. Look, I have a pretty simple morning routine. I'm a big believer in morning routines. Anyone listening knows this. I talk about it. But meditation is a piece of that for sure. I'm not well versed at all. In fact, my meditation practice is delivered by the Calm app, who, by the way, I just also had on this podcast.
That's great.
But in any form, the idea of tapping into being conscious of our consciousness is useful and fundamental. So now, as we pull it back to this idea that the Shawnism that we're kicking off with today, calm is power. Where have you seen this embodied? So you help very wealthy people, probably very successful people, at least in terms of wealth, and probably in many other realms as well. You help them invest their money. You help them plan their futures. You help them consider their lifestyle, I think. Where have you seen this well embodied, this idea that calm is power?
Well, the entrepreneurs that we help and who've really scaled their business get to a point where they don't need to scale it anymore. Um, it's not a, it's something that it's something that they're not doing it for themselves anymore. They
Mhm.
don't have that need. And when you take yourself out of the equation, that can definitely, to the extent that you can, that can create a sense of calmness. You know, I think one of the hardest things about financial success the first time around, and what I say a lot, what I came to the conclusion through writing this book is that wealth creation is followed by destruction.
Hmm.
We can create money, but then we destroy, again, back to this idea of Shiva, right? We might destroy our health, one of the four pillars of conscious wealth. We may destroy our family relationships, or our community, or we may destroy our perspective, mental health. But almost always, I've never seen it the first time, to create inordinate amount of financial wealth, there is some destruction.
Hmm.
And then what's nice about that is that, the thing that you've created, you can use to help repair all that was destroyed through the access or the earning or accumulating of it. Like money can help. Money can be a catalyst to reinvest in yourself, reinvest in your family in ways that a lot of people just don't have access to.
Hmm.
Right? Like if I want to change my health, I can get, as I third time I'll mention it, say I go to the club and it's a really nice one. Or if I need to work on my perspective, I can pay for a good therapist or get a good team around me. So I can start to rebuilding myself. But a lot of that is also then letting go of the need for more and letting go of this need about it being me. And that's where calm comes in. As I'm starting to rebuild my company imperfectly, as we all do, but rebuild, I mean, kind of go into the next chapter and really start to grow. There is a calmness about it. Where we all want it to happen, and we know it will, but we don't. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to happen the way that we want to. It's like this knowing, this trust, and knowing and trust in one another that we'll all fulfill our roles within the company and support one another. And it's almost the inactivity now, the spaces between the notes that is going to help us grow our business, as opposed to what got us here, which was drive. Drive isn't going to take us to the next level where we want to get to.
Yeah. These are great observations. And I think it's interesting for anyone listening to reflect on the fact that, you're in the unique position to interact with people that have experienced radical financial success, which is something that I think a lot of people would love to experience. I think a lot of people not everyone, but a lot of people, plenty of people equate success, just that word, with financial success.
Sure.
And I think you'll be the first to tell us that there are many other realms of success.
Yeah.
Um, but what would you say to people who, you know, so you've trafficked, look, in your life on earth, you can't help but interact with all types of people like any human.
Yeah.
Yet you have this unique perspective into the radically financially successful, and you see patterns and you observe. First of all, what would you say to people who have never or may never experience that kind of radical financial success, that you take away in terms of, our ability as humans to live a full and conscious life with or without it?
Well, it's definitely harder to do it with it.
Hold on. Let's just reflect on what that means for a second. Your response is it's harder to live a conscious uh, and what did I say? Let's just say it's harder to live a conscious and fulfilling life with it.
with extreme amounts of money, or
Yeah.
with I think so.
Yeah. Okay. That is so poignant. And I think it's worth those listening to have just place a little bit of faith in your words that, because most of us will never get to experience that. But here you are, an observer of these people that have it. And you're telling us that it's harder in the end to achieve it with it than without it. And I think that's like a needle off the record kind of statement.
Well, just to clarify, because I'm talking about myself and my
Yeah.
observations, and not with
Yeah.
my clients.
Sure. Sure.
But yes, so let's go back. So it is so one of the so our my team is one of the things I do is I buy my team books, and I want them, and then we have like book club meetings, and we bought this book. I think it was like How to Live Well. It's this Japanese book, and it's a parable. And one of the things that this said, what I thought was really important, is a life where you speak and think truth is a life worth lived. Like that. So we get so wrapped up, and I call it, maybe in a crass way, financial or success porn. Look how much money this guy who builds cars has, or builds rocket ships has, or builds this tech company. Look how they scaled by their age 30. And those are all things to sit back and wonder in awe. But at the end of the day, I don't believe this is our only lifetime. And whatever lifetime we're in, if we can live a life of integrity, and more importantly, to speak truth and think truth, to have truthful thoughts,
Mm.
that is a successful life.
Mm.
That is the bar. And then everything beyond that is having fun.
Mm.
And so with the level of financial success that I've had, in the sense that I'm saying that I get to run my own company, I get to build and craft this team and help them, watch them grow, and they help me grow. And that's fun. Business now for me isn't a way to get money. It's a way to pass time and have fun, and to really build like lifelong relationships. And my clients, many of them are lifelong. I've known them for 15 years. The people that we work with, whether on our team or in the conscious capitalism terms, our stakeholders, are like lifelong relationships, friendships. That's all should just be having fun, like work fun, hard work fun, but still fun. I think, yeah.
I love that. I just wrapped up our once annual, now 18th annual Manager Fest, where we bring everyone together, all of our store managers, all the people at Lovesac headquarters, and get together for training and collaboration and partying. And in my final kind of wrap up speech, as it were, I was re-articulating, the company's higher purpose, our mission, our vision, our values, and kind of tying them back to the underlying message of this brand, which is love. It's in our name. It's hanging over our door in 300 shopping malls. It's on our chest if we're wearing a hoodie. It's so cool that we're able to sneak it in there. We attach it to the word sack, and it becomes kind of fun and, deprecating and whatever. But as I'm articulating all of this for about an hour, and people have had a long week of training and meetings, I'm so in awe that, this is a room of like 600 people, giant ballroom at a Marriott somewhere, and you can hear a pin drop. And it's not because I'm a great speaker. I said this afterward, I got a lot of compliments like, oh my gosh, like, that was really heartfelt and whatever. Really felt great about all of this. And I said to people, it's only because, like, by the way, I had almost zero preparation for this speech, right? I put a little deck together. I had some images, of course, a big slideshow of them and the week that we shared together, and some music. But in terms of what I was going to say, I had like no prep, and I didn't need prep. And the reason I didn't need prep is because the concepts, the ideas, the ideals, the philosophies, the values that I was articulating are true. They are
Mm-hmm.
good. They are good. They are beautiful, and they are true. And when that's the case, it's easy. And the reason I'm sharing this is because it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with my ability as a speaker or whatever, as a presenter, or by the way, even as I don't know, a creator of some of these philosophies or something. It has to do with eternal truth, eternal principles that when we get the chance to traffic in them, and in fact, then to even build an organization around and share and articulate together, unpack them, and then go execute against them together.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more with what you said. This is a life well lived. And so sometimes people will meet me, and we just met, but they'll meet me and they'll hear me talk about Lovesac and what we're doing. And we're doing some cool stuff. We've lived a lot of life in 27 years. It has not been easy,
I'm sure.
but I think the best is yet to come. And people will be like, dude, how are you still so stoked on Lovesac, this company that you started as a side hustle in college? To your point, it's not my third go around. This isn't my third crack at what this is like one continuum for me. In fact, I don't even have any real liquid wealth. It's all inside this vehicle. Because by the way, I'm asking you to join my company and take a risk on your career here. Why should it be easy for me? So all my chips are still on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not proud of that. This is not financial advice, by the way. You're sitting there like, oh man, we got to get you diversified.
We're going to talk afterwards.
But listen, I can't look you in the face and ask you to risk your whole career and so people will ask me, why are you still so jacked up about Lovesac? And the answer is because after this very long time of surviving, and we did have to survive for a lot of years, decades, in fact, to get to a place where we understand our purpose, understand who we are, what we're doing here, and what's possible with this brand, and to build an institution in a day where institutions are no longer trusted. Brands actually can be, especially if they're well crafted and well led. Companies, in some cases, are the last bastion of hope for people because their governments failed them, their schools have failed them, the systems have failed them. If they can get inside of an organization that has purpose and meaning. And so I stand up there on that stage articulating some of these principles in flow state, and people can feel it. I know they can because I can feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because these are true and good and beautiful principles. And if I get to, this is the answer to the question, if I get to do that for another 27 years, I couldn't be more blessed. So look, the first 27 hurt, but not that bad. I'm still here. So let's go another 27. And when that becomes your mentality, now nothing can stop you. Because even if it's another 3 years of recession in the home category, as it has been, by the way, since COVID, whatever. I've lived through every kind of recession, pullback, hard time, rough time, people quitting, people coming, people going, competitors eating, you know, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who cares? And if I get to live in a place where truth surrounds me and the opportunity can be chased, wow, all the finance stuff aside, what a blessing.
Yeah. And so when I said before that, maybe it's harder when you have money,
Hmm.
whatever, we don't need to get to the final base point, but what is, or like a final answer, but what is tricky is that in order to maintain consciousness as you have financial wealth, you can't hold on to it. You have to let it flow and you have to let it go through you. And in your case, you're speaking to your employees. But if you start to hoard what you have, either the tap will be cut off from you, that it will no longer come to you, or it will eat you alive what you're holding on to. And what's ironic is that the more that you let go and the more that you give and the more that you accept, there will be more and more and more come.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What a principle.
That's the principle of abundance. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's tricky to traffic in these realms, and I would encourage people to find these books. You know, you and I have there are a few books with the title of abundance in them, and
Mhm.
and every one I've read is great. And there are what are some of the books, because it's impossible for us to articulate all of the things that we think we know or that we've stumbled across in our long journeys together. What are a few of the top books that come to mind on these topics of consciousness and abundance and these places
Sure.
that you traffic in?
So I do read The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. I'm
Mm.
really inspired by that book. I think if there was one book, I've probably listened to it like 40 or 50 times, and every time I read
Wow.
it, it's something new for me. I really like that. He takes a lot of the teachers and brings it together.
Mm.
I am continuously reading the Tao Te Ching, as I mentioned before. I have that. I read it this morning. I'll read one chapter. I've been reading a chapter a day. Right now, I'm in the phase where I'm really reading it. I think a lot of people like Pema Chodron. Not as a person, I mean as an author. She's not my. I struggle with it. It's something that's a real challenge for me. So I still read it because it's hard. But I think I mostly go to poetry. I find most of my inspiration in poetry. So I read a lot of Hafez, or the Sufi poets, the Sufi mystical poets, most famously like Rumi, but there's so many others. And I really enjoy that type of work. I read a lot of native or indigenous poetry, like a Joy Harjo, writes some really good stuff. And so there's what I like about poetry is, sometimes you read a book, like you go to Power of Intention, and it might be like 300 pages long and it takes you a long time to read. But
Mm.
like poetry is just right there. And if you read it and you read it out loud, it can just knock you off your seat. You're
Yeah.
like, bam, there that was. It just hits you right in the face. And you can get a whole book in a few stanzas. And I like
Mhm.
that. So that's what I kind of go to now more often.
Interesting. I need to get myself some. Are there any great I don't traffic in poetry. I'd like to. What's an actual title I could buy and get into this?
I would say I really like Joy. I mentioned Joy Harjo, Praise the Rain.
Praise the
I
Rain.
think that's the
Okay.
name of her book. I really like that a lot.
Yeah, let me
Um, I read a lot of Rilke. I don't remember the name of I guess is the Book of Hours.
okay.
I think the guy's name is Mitchell who translates. It's really important when you get Rilke to get the good translation. Well, you can just kind of research which translation makes most sense for you. Some of them are very literal. Some of them are move away from it.
Yeah.
If you read any Rumi, you can read any of his compilations, but you want to look at Coleman Barks because he's the best um, interpreter. There's a book called I should support this author because I love him. Omid Safi, Safi, Omid Omid, and it's called Radical Love, and it's the book of the Sufis. And then lastly, I think you might be interested in this, by Nan Merrill, Nan Merrill, two R's, two L's.
Hmm.
It's out of print, but you can still find it. It's a book of Psalms, but it's the Psalms written in non-paternalistic, non-militaristic terms. So they
Hmm.
take out all God is a man, and they take out all all war-like words. And that's like one of the things I really like because I grew up in a Catholic church, and all of it was very, the Old Testament God.
Mhm.
But when you just and some people don't like this translation, but
Sure.
I do. It's not even a translation; it's just an adaptation. It's saying,
Mhm.
what would it be if somebody who wasn't living in the harsh conditions of the Old Testament wrote the Old Testament? What would it then look like? What if they lived in a state of abundance? How would that be written? How would God be described? And it's a really cool little book I have.
Oh, that's interesting. I will check it out. For those listening, I want to support what you said just from my own perspective. I think that words matter, language matters. And the thing that I gained so much from learning Chinese, because I learned it pretty fluently. I took the time to learn how to read and write. I was, in my case, again, I was a missionary for my church. I got to learn so we're out on the street all day, every day. We're not students. we're speaking it from dusk until dawn with natives in their homes, eating dinner and reading scripture with them in Mandarin. And what I learned from that, because of course I had grown up reading, for instance, the Book of Mormon in English, and I know it so well. And reading the translation in a different language makes you realize, wow, first of all, language matters, words matter. And by the way, there are phrases in Chinese that gave me a whole new perspective on this book that I was already super familiar with.
Yeah.
And what I take from that is that our language that we think we know, let's say English, because we're having this conversation in English and those listening are experiencing in English, it is limited. Every language is limited. Every language has also its strengths and weaknesses. But concepts and principles and ideals, these eternal principles, in fact, that we are kind of dancing around, celebrating, they extend beyond language. Like we as humans have the capacity to understand things that go beyond the words that we can use to express them. Anyone who's had a child knows this. Anyone
Mhm.
who's deeply empathized with someone who's just experienced a tragedy knows this. There's no words that you can use to be adequate. It
Yeah.
seems so trite, to say thank you. What else are you going to say to someone who you feel deeply indebted to say, I'm so sorry when you've just learned the worst kind of, I mean, it's so inadequate, but it doesn't matter, right? Like the eye to eye contact and the communication that can be expressed can go way beyond words.
Mhm.
And, to kind of pull it full circle is back to this, the topic of today's conversation, calm is power. Our ability to communicate as a species, our ability to experience communication, our ability to learn concepts,
Mhm.
principles, and ideals can extend way beyond even language if we can find ourselves in a place where we can be taught spiritually, where we can hear emotionally, where we can go beyond the words on the page. And that's why poetry is so special, is because with the combination of a few words, a
Mhm.
great poet can articulate a whole meaning. I mean, this is one thing Chinese is really good at. Like if you know Chinese idioms,
Yeah.
there's entire dictionaries filled with thousands of pages of basically 4-syllable phrases. And a lot of them get translated to English, in sloppy ways, like "How Zhou Bu Jian," long time no see. Like we experience these 4
Oh,
phrase.
wow. Yeah, that's
I mean, it's
cool.
a dumb example, but like, and a more meaningless one. But the point is you hear, do you hear these? But like it's because a Chinese character is 1 syllable, but it's packed with meaning.
Mhm.
You know, um, even in the actual radicals of that character. And my point being that we have the capacity, those listening, you have the capacity to understand this earth, understand the world, understand your wealth, understand your children, understand your place in the universe in ways that extend beyond your language. But if we are unwilling to get calm, get quiet, tap into our souls, be fed on a spiritual basis, read from the best books, hear from the best speakers, which is not me, but hopefully even on this podcast, we've given you a path to some of them. You actually have the capacity to know more, do more, feel more, and take a lot more experience from this life. And meanwhile, none of this, except for maybe the ability to, you know, purchase a book on Audible or Amazon, has one iota of connection back to wealth. And to your point, the noise that comes with wealth. I'm talking
Mhm.
about financial wealth. The noise that comes with great financial wealth will often drown out the truth that we get to soak in and experience and traffic in if we're willing to spend a piece of our life, or hopefully even more of our life, trafficking in truths and principles and ideals versus noise. And there can be great noise. So as you've gotten to interact with these very wealthy, successful people by the world standards, And you said yourself, it can be harder because of the money, which is interesting.
Mhm.
Um, what, what advice do you have, for those of us experiencing all the noise around us, whether induced upon us by the world, because we live in such a crazy world right now? I mean, you don't have to go very far to accept that as a truth. What advice do you have for those listening, um, to exercise their ability to get calm, stay calm in a sea of chaos, and exercise that power that we are celebrating on today's pod?
Yeah. Um, well, I was so lucky last weekend. I got to spend time with my niece, and she's my intern, so she's going to hear this. And she's on our marketing team too. And some of the things I talked to her about, and some of the things that I strive to live up to, and that you alluded to before, is there's an emotional body, there's a physical body, and there's a mental body. And if you agitate one, the other one may get agitated.
Hmm.
And she said, we went to the corner and I got a coffee, and I said, "You want a coffee?" And she says, "No, I get shaky after a coffee. I'm going to have a tea." That's a really great awareness that I'm proud of, because what happens oftentimes in our industry, um, wealth management, or if you just turn on and watch CNBC, is they are trying to induce a physical sensation from you. They're trying to make your body feel a certain way. I would argue fearful. If I drink too much coffee, I get fearful. And so once I make my body feel a certain way, my mind isn't smart enough all the time to say, "Oh, that's just my body that feels fearful. I'm
Hmm.
not fearful." So then my mind starts having fearful thoughts. Then my emotions kick in. And before you know it, we call it anxiety. Right.
Mhm.
And then then you have this whole mess of things. And so one of the things that we had talked about, and I was really impressed by her, is her understanding of how the physical body, it plays a role in how you feel. And
Mm.
so we do a monthly salon at my house. We have 16 people come in and we talk about important things, and we serve bread and butter. We were going to serve croissants and danishes, and then we said, well, that's really not all that healthy. Like, we want to nourish people. How do we serve food that actually brings people nervous system down? So that's key.
Hmm.
I think for me also is paying attention to my um, emotions, of my thoughts. I'm not great at this all the time, Shawn, but if I'm scanning the internet and I'm looking through one of these Instagram or Facebook or types of things, these are all just thoughts that I'm getting. These are ideas that are entering my mind.
Mhm.
And that is going to impact how I feel. It's gonna, and then it may affect my body. I may have a somatic response, and plenty of people recently have had somatic responses because we've been showing very traumatic things on the news, and namely an assassination of a human being on a stage. Like that
Mhm.
will now I had a thought come into my mind, and now my body's reacting a certain way. It's really hard to feel calm when I have ideas of hate coming and just being planted in my consciousness.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the emotional side too. So, any advice like that I look to give myself when in the past couple of weeks, I have been running a bit hotter than I'd like, is how do I start turning the temperature down on all of these? How do I turn the temperature down on my body? What am I digesting mentally and emotionally? What am I, and then what then you go back to just the basic question of how can I have truth, thoughts and actions of truth? How can I do that? And then what do I have control over? You know, the um, I can be really upset with something in life, and then I can go ahead and post about it and add fuel to the flame. Say, "Oh, look, I did something on social media. I said I don't like this politician, or I hate this politician, or I can actually just try to incorporate that change within myself." And that's what I increasingly will look to do is, hey, look, I have a mission on this earth, and this mission is my growth, and just slowly is purifying myself as much as I can. Purifying is a tough word, but we'll just use that word for now. right? And keeping myself in a place where I can expand more and be part and embody love, right? God is love, embody love. If I can do that as much as possible, that's going to be a lot more beneficial to me than digesting all of these things. And I'm such an independent person. I don't want to give them that control. I don't want to give them that power over my body and mind and emotion. So
Mhm.
those are the ways that I think about it, is the interplay between those three, being very careful of what I digest, and then understanding what I can control,
Yeah,
which is as much as I can, the being I want to be, you know?
I love it. I mean, sage advice. Do not be a leaf, blown around by every wind and breeze that will toss you because, uh, this world, there are scheming people and scheming organizations in this world that absolutely want to blow you around,
Yeah.
push you in
Yeah.
different directions. And if you let it, that's what will happen. So just to summarize, throw back at you what you covered. I mean, from a guy that runs investments, invest in your body. Don't
Hmm.
just let it, go where it goes and control it. Invest in your mind and control it. Invest in your emotions and control them. And thereby control what you can control, which by the way are all three of those things to some degree.
Hmm.
Take action, do those things, and let the rest just pass by. Your last bit, embody love. So that's the end of my morning mantra. I talk about this a lot on the pod, but I have a morning mantra. These are things that I wish were true about myself, that I continue to say to myself every morning, you know, because they're not true enough. And the last line of my morning mantra, I am love, because I'm not naturally, like, I'm a task oriented, driven, kind of like doer that, if I'm not careful, can run roughshod around the people around me, including my own children, if I'm not investing in myself every morning, and not just in the morning, throughout the day. And these one liners, by the way, then stick with me throughout the day. And so I'll wake up with all kinds of anxiety because, dude, I mean, come on, this world is insane.
Hmm.
Sometimes I wonder, am I just getting older? And so it's kind of like, kids these days, maybe they were always this crazy. And just as you get older, you just are more aware of something. But I don't think so. I think the world is absolutely becoming more volatile. And we are always at risk of succumbing to being a leaf and being blown around by it. But again, my morning mantra, one of the lines, I will not operate from a place of fear. So, having just said that, every morning when I find myself brooding on sales this week, or like today or whatever, my team or someone quit, or who knows what's going on, the fearful stuff, or by the way, the news cycle, any of it, that invariably, because I've said it, I've woken up with some discipline. That line will pass through my mind. I will not operate from a place of fear. And so I switch. And okay, how do I face these same issues from a place of love, from a place of abundance, from a place of confidence? And I'm instantly stronger. But I can only get to that place if I've woken up and sought the calm that comes from discipline with the body, with the mind, with the spirit, with the emotion. And that's why calm is power.
Yeah. And while you said that, I had this image of a riptide. And so, thankfully I've never been, but I always know that if you get caught in a riptide, you have to just kind of let go and let it take you out,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can swim vertical and come back to the shore. And so what you're talking about throughout the day reminds me of this idea of forgetfulness. You or even when you may have lost your temper or whatever, you were still love. You just forgot. You're getting pushed out by the riptide. You swim back over and you come back in. Yeah.
And remembering, right? And it's when
Mhm.
we remember, it's when I remember, okay, I will not operate from a place of fear, but I can only remember the things that can be remembered. And that's why reading the best books, reading from scripture, in my case, reading, uh, praying, meditating, mantras, manifestation. The things we say, words do have power out in the universe, because what happens is these words help us remember, help us show up better. And then we get better outcomes and we say, oh my gosh, we look back and say, all the things I wrote down on my vision board happened. And they did, by the way. I've proven this in my organization. It's so cool. I'll go back to like 2016. I've shown this at some of our manager fests, some of our annual events. I've shown our goals back from a decade ago. And wouldn't you know it, every one of them happened.
Mm-hmm.
And not always on the exact timeline we prognosticated, sometimes faster, sometimes slower. But the point is they all happen. So you can call that, I don't know, good management. You can call that goal setting. You can call it luck. Either way, it happened. And, if we can develop in these, and that's why I think the early morning hours are so critical, because we have the blessing of waking up. Even if you wake up with anxiety, and if we can push ourselves to wake up a little bit earlier, there's something magical about these hours before the sun's come up,
Mm-hmm.
before the whole world's awakened, where you have real quiet, and we can tap into things in those moments of calm that we cannot tap into in the frenetic moments of the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not a morning person, I'm not, admittedly, I find the opportunity, I'll call it, to push myself out of bed to do things sometimes even like what I love, like dirt biking, which is a lot more fun to wake up to. But before I go, I do those things. I read the scripture, I pray, I meditate, and it takes discipline to do that. It takes waking up even a little earlier. Then you're already waking up early.
Yeah,
to go do the thing you love, whatever that is, right? And that's how I use it. I use the thing I love to drag my lazy sack out of bed and get going, Look, you deal with, again, some of the world's most successful people. Any great examples that you can draw from, and any great advice, you give these people life advice. If I can steal a bit from you, leave our listeners with value. You've seen these patterns amongst some of those people that have achieved what so many of those listening want to achieve, they think. What are some of the good patterns that you can offer up, some of the cool things, some of the cool disciplines you've seen put in place, the way they handle their children, the way they handle their families, the way they handle their money? Give us some tactical wisdom before we go.
I'll go big and then we'll go tactical. Because one of the big things that's been coming to mind and that you brought, that's like I've been thinking about, is recently I was talking with a close advisor and friend, and I said, "Oh, I need to be more like this, and I need to do, I need to be more self-compassionate. I need to be kinder to myself." I was saying all these things, and it kind of reminds me of the conversation we were just having. And he asked me one of the most pointed questions I'd ever heard. And he said, "Well, how many of there are you?" And I said, "Well, there's only one." He goes, "Why? Who is the I taking? Who's being kinder to you, and who is like?" I'm like, "Oh my God, I don't know." So I sat for a minute and I said, "Oh, I guess I just got to be." And he goes, "Yeah, like that's it. You just need to be." And that's a big part of our organization and part of our calling with our clients is we don't need to make our clients more generous. We don't need to make them more impact oriented. We need to accept them whoever they are and allow them to have a situation where they have the financial resources and they have the absence or decreasing of fear around these things such as money so that they can go out and do good in the world. And that there is no one in the world who knows how to be successful and successful in the largest expansive sense of the word than they do. I don't have a recipe for them. What we do see them getting caught up on, common things that people get caught up on, is they don't talk to their family about money. And that is huge. And even worse is that oftentimes there are not effective conversations about what's going to happen when somebody dies. That's a really big issue. What is going to happen with the financial resources, just to begin with, on that? There's so much misunderstanding around that. And a lot of times it's for good reason. Well, there's Like half of Americans have not had half of older Americans have not had a conversation with their family about money. Actually, 2/3. Sorry, 2/3 of Americans have not had a conversation with their family about. Older Americans have not had a conversation with their family about inheritance, and one half never plan to. That's a problem. That's a ticking time bomb. We've got
Mm-hmm.
$90 trillion worth of money in the hands of the oldest Americans, and people aren't talking about it. So that's
Why
a
do you
big
think that is,
mission of,
by the way? Why do you think, I mean, I observe it as well,
yeah.
in
I
my,
think all the time. I think one of the reasons is that I will ask somebody and they say, well, I don't want my kids to be spoiled. I say, fine. Nobody likes spoiled kids. Who likes spoiled kids? But what does that mean to you? And there's not a real clear definition. And it takes time to understand what does spoiled mean and what types of behaviors you want from your heirs. And then it also takes a modeling program of like, okay, well, like, how are we going to set this up so it's not like one day you're expected to be that way. But really defining what spoiled and isn't spoiled is can allow people to let go. Another reason is because they're not talking about money because they think that money or wealth means inheritance. But wealth can mean a lot more than inheritance. It can be your family stories. It can be your experience. It can be um, your network. And so letting the family having a definition of what wealth is and letting your family in on the non-monetary aspects of the family wealth is a great starting point. But a lot of people believe, oh, well, if we're going to talk about wealth, we have to talk about money. It's not true. And then there's also just this whole idea that I'm going to get stuck on this. I have to tell them everything about the family money or nothing. And it's not true. So a lot of times people say, well, I've told my children that I'm going to swallow my last quarter, and bounce my last check. That's great if you know when you're going to die. And hopefully you don't. So then if that's the case, so there's this idea, well, I'm not going to tell them anything when nobody says, first of all, nobody says you have to give your kids anything. Like,
yeah.
there's no law. You do have to give your spouse. There is a law for that, 50% of your assets. But beyond that, you do not have to give your children anything. And so this belief, well, I'm going to have to tell them and I'm going to have to break the news. There are like, you can tell them as little, you can give them glimpses into the family wealth. You can start with gifting. There's all of these different steps that we help families do, as opposed to making it an all or nothing situation. And I think those are the types of things that are really holding families back from having meaningful conversations.
Look, I think if nothing else, just the last 5 minutes have been a brilliant example to anyone listening as to why you should have a financial professional like Brandon.
Thanks, Shawn.
If there are any, as I don't know, as deep as Brandon, um, advising you, because you may get to spend, and by the way, regardless of how much money you have or how much you expect to generate in your mortal existence, it doesn't matter. Money, like language, as we've talked about on this podcast, is a very powerful force in the world. It should not be left to be blown around like a leaf. It should be thoughtful and planful. In my case, I don't know in the end, whatever that means, where I'm going to land. But at the moment, the thing I think about the most, if I get lucky enough to have any kind of financial wealth, uh, toward the end of my mortal existence, I honestly don't know if I want my kids to have any part in it. It's not because I'm trying to be difficult. It's because the only reason I have any spiritual, mental, emotional, physical strength is because I was forced to perform under the harsh pressure of financial commitment. I had to pay off my debts. I had to perform. I had to make something happen, or there were times in my life where it would have been cataclysmic for me. And it was that
Yeah.
pressure that pushed me through. Now, I'm not saying I wish on them all the same kinds of pressures I have, but at the same time, I feel like I'd be robbing them of them becoming them if
Mm-hmm.
I alleviate that too greatly for them. And so I don't know the answer yet. And we can talk after, and I can seek all the great advice I can get from Brandon, from people like Brandon.
But I would
But
like to say something about that because I think it's really important and a very important calling of me and part of the message that I'm carrying is that in a lot of entrepreneur circles, the default is I want generational wealth. And what that kind of turns into now is I want, it used to be like I want FU money. And now it's like I want my great grandchildren to have FU money. And you're like, wait, why? So discovering what is generative generational wealth is really important for people.
because, by the way, I
Yeah.
would prefer my great grandchildren didn't use the phrase F you to anybody. That's what I
Sorry.
want.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I'm using it
Yeah.
as a joke, like,
Yes. Yes,
why would I want
exactly.
great grandchildren running around saying F you to anybody?
Well, that's right, because you don't want to rob them of the opportunity of uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah.
And life is uncertain. So generative generational wealth, what does that mean? And I think to a lot of people that means, well, I want to send my kids to a college. I want to be able to give my kids money for a down payment if they can't afford it. If they lose their job, I don't want them to be out on the street. Maybe I want to help my grandchildren go to a private school that we couldn't attend. And then you could continue to add on top of that. But what is determining what is generative generational wealth? What does it really mean to like uplift my heirs as opposed to straddle them? And it's a different answer for every single person, but it's really key. And not, as you said, like a leaf, just adopt. Well, I should just have as much money as possible because that's freedom. We know that's not true.
Yeah. This is great advice and just the tip of the iceberg and a great, hopefully, motivation for anyone listening to seek out professional help like Brandon and those like him have to offer. But I don't think there's many like Brandon. I think that your practice and your approach is unique. And I can tell that if, someone was lucky enough to rub shoulders with you and have you as an advisor, forget money, have you as an advisor, they could benefit tremendously from that. So look, any last words in the spirit of let me save you 25 years, you're also a CEO, you're also an entrepreneur yourself, building an organization. For anyone getting started out, 25 years ago, as it were, for you, what's a piece of advice you could leave us with that would have saved you a chunk off your own 25-year journey?
I'm such an independent soul that I had to make all my lessons myself. I probably could have read more business books. I've given a lot of like other type of advice, but I could have read more business books, and I could have definitely learned from others more. But I am very much a go it alone, just drive forward. I'll find the solutions when I need them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would say that's that's what I got for you.
It's great advice. And the reason I'm smiling is because I only read business books, and it's for the same reason. It's because I was too egotistical and too go it alone to actually go seek out mentors. Even to this
Uh,
day, I'm that way.
yeah, yeah,
And so I need to be more open to true mentors and actual advice and actual advisors.
yeah.
Uh, so it's funny the way these things manifest. And I appreciate your vulnerability and honesty. That's fantastic. Look, for more, you can follow Brandon as I do on LinkedIn, Brandon Hatton. That's Hatton. He's on Instagram at Conscious Wealth. Very easy to look up. And definitely check out his YouTube channel for more brilliant advice. Conscious Wealth with an underscore at the end on YouTube. To the philanthropic philosopher, the financial wizard of family well-being, and the captain of conscious wealth himself, Brandon Hatton. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. I love that term. There you go. Thanks, Shawn. It's been a pleasure. I haven't had a conversation like this in a while, so it's nourishing.
Likewise. And for all those listening, remember this: calm isn't just a state of being, it's a superpower. Find it, seek it, master it, and you will navigate chaos, make smarter decisions, and own your own life no matter what's thrown your way. it just might save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.